gonna wanna do it. I thought that she and Barbara didn't wanna do it.
No, they said, hold off on any appointments until the committee can review and recommend candidates. So they asked us to hold off,
Oh,
Good evening, everyone.
but now they've,
Welcome to the July 16th, 2018 meeting of the Board of Selectmen, Highway Commissioners, Cemetery Commissioners. First order of business, rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, the board would like to take note of the passing of Bob Rock. Bob served many roles in town. He was a lifelong resident of Dudley, Selectman, Veterans Agent, Board of Health. No, not Board of Health. He was on 3 or 4 other committees, but obviously most people would remember Bobby as the Veterans Agent. He served tirelessly back in the day when guys were getting involved. He was, I believe, World War II. I think, right? World War II veteran?
Korean War.
Korean War. And I'm sure I speak for the board when we say Bob will be missed, and we send sympathies to his family. And also, we'd like to congratulate Edwina Holeva, who retired recently from Treasurer Collector's Office. Edwina was the assistant in the Collector's Office for many years, and most of us probably had to have our bills processed by Edwina at one time, and she will be missed, but we wish her well in her retirement.
Yes. Thank you, Edwina, for all you've done for the town.
Mr. Ruda, all set? First up on the agenda, acceptance of minutes, July 2nd, 2018. What is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to accept the minutes of July 2nd, 2018 as written.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussions, changes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. On appointments, Economic Development Committee. Brian Lebrecq currently serves as an alternate. Would like to be appointed as a full member of the Economic Development Committee, term to expire 6/30/2021. Is Brian present?
Move to appoint, Mr. Chair.
Brian's present. Anything you want to add, Brian? You want to come up?
I'd just like to say, just started as an alternate and look forward to the opportunity to continue as a full member. That's all I have.
I'd like to thank Brian.
Thank you for stepping up.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you, Brian, again.
Motion to appoint, Mr. Chairman?
Motion to appoint, term,
Second.
motion to appoint, term ending on 6/30/2021. All in favor? State aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you, Brian. Joanne Chimchak, reappointment as a full member, term to expire 6/30/2020.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made in a second. I don't see Joanne here, but she comes with no introduction needed. All in favor, state aye.
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 Unanimous. Barbara Zarowski to be appointed as an alternate, term to expire 6/30/2021. I don't see Barbara
So
present.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Does that fill the Economic Development Committee with
Yes.
members?
yes.
Perfect. That's become a very active committee in town, and we certainly thank all that serve. Next up, we have a registrar, a reappointment, Elizabeth Parent, the Democratic Registrar, term to expire 3/31/2021. Is Elizabeth here? Is not. What's the board's pleasure?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Marcy,
Second.
second by Mr. Ruda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, state aye.
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 Unanimous. Next up, we welcome members of the Planning Board to come up for a joint appointment of either Gregory P. Benoit or Andrew J. Cronauer to the Planning Board, term to expire June 10th, 2019, which would be the next local election. Guys want to come up? Either way, sure, either way, doesn't matter.
Plenty of room today.
Just for the record, you guys can just read your name into the microphone.
Guy Horn, Vice Chairman of the Planning Board.
Pam Humphrey, Clerk to the Board.
Dan Edmiston, member.
So the purpose of tonight is there was a tie for the write-ins position. And since then, I can turn over to the vice chair of the planning board, but I believe there was a letter of interest submitted by at least one of the candidates.
Both of the candidates.
Both did.
Maybe we could ask the two candidates if they're present, they could come to the table?
Both candidates come up.
See Andrew.
Is there only one present?
I guess. I don't know, I didn't know either one of them.
Oh, I didn't either.
Although
Not
I
either.
do know of this gentleman.
I don't.
Sir, can you state your name for the record and give us a
Gregory
brief?
Benoit.
Nice to meet you. You want to give us a brief statement of maybe why you're interested or qualifications?
I can tell you that I've been an attorney. I'm an attorney in the city of Worcester. Before that, I was an attorney with the district attorney's office. I've resided in Dudley since about the age of 12. When my parents moved me here, and then I bought a house about 2.5 years ago in Dudley.
Okay. Mr. Horn, what's the board's pleasure?
I guess we just vote individually, or?
Generally, don't we get a recommendation?
Is the planner, is Don here?
Don's here.
John's here.
Don. Have you heard from the other candidate, Don?
Did he know that we were doing this tonight? Just,
I would assume.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Ruda.
I'll make a motion to appoint Gregory P. Benoit to the planning board, to break the tie that was caused at the write-in election.
Motion made by Mr. Ruda to appoint Gregory P. Benoit. Is there a second?
second.
Seconded by Mr. Massey. Any further nominations? Hearing none, I'll close them. Call to a vote. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Change of vote. Unanimous 6-0 vote for Gregory P. Benoit, a term to expire June 10, 2019. Thank you for coming forward.
Thank you.
Mr. Benoit.
Good luck. You have to get sworn in by the town clerk.
Mr. Chairman, also,
Mr. Horn.
I'd like to say that to the other candidate, we would like to offer him the alternate position on the planning board if he's interested. We currently have an alternate, but that person also serves as the, I think you're well aware, the chairman of the Economic Development Committee. So if the other gentleman was, if he choose to do so, we could offer him the alternate position on the planning board until next June, when there'll be more openings.
So when, the alternate that's serving now, did his term expire?
I believe it did.
I think he offered,
Going for a year, so
he offered to give it
it
up.
comes up in August.
Okay.
I think he offered to give it up to make room for.
We have to get that in writing,
Right,
that he's rescinding his appointment.
right. But only if this gentleman's
Right,
interested.
the only one steps up.
Yeah.
Oh, we don't need a joint appointment for that, I don't
No,
believe.
but
that-
just let you know.
I think that's a great idea. I mean, I actually know Andrew, and I wish he could have been here just so everybody could meet him. But yeah, hopefully, can we somebody reach out and say, hey, would you like to be an alternate? That'll be a good way for him to,
Right.
get his feet wet too.
That would work.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for
Thank
coming
you
in.
guys.
I'm just gonna have, is Newport on your agenda? Do you need us again, or?
Greg, is the taking of the Newpond Dam on the agenda tonight?
Yes, further down the agenda.
Yeah. or-
Yes, second page.
The public business?
Correct, under public
Chairman-
business is first item.
Take it out of order.
Yeah, let's do the resignation first.
All right, hold on, let's do this first.
What do we do?
We'll take it out of order.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to note that there was a letter in the packet that Mr. Brian Canty is seeking appointment to the Zoning Board of Appeals. There's a letter in your packet indicating that he's seeking an appointment to fill the term held by Mr. Bill LePage Jr., expiring on June 30th, 2022, and I see that Brian is in the audience.
Can we vote on
Yeah, we posted it, just didn't get into your packet.
All right, so I want to do that as an appointment?
Yeah, I would ask that you consider Mr. Canty's appointment.
Ryan, you want to come up, or?
Oh, he did write a letter.
Some members of my family are questioning my sanity right now, but
that? You get used to
I wasn't gonna say anything, Brian.
I just feel that I'd like to get involved again, and I'd rather go back to an area where I have some experience and expertise, that's all.
So what was the term again, Greg, on that?
June 30, 2022. Full member.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to appoint Brian Canty, June 30th, 2022. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
All right.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you,
Again.
Brian,
Thank
welcome
you very
back.
much.
Need you.
Good to see you back.
The Chair will accept with regret the Council of Aging resignation of Alice Langlois, who is currently, or formerly Chair and member of the Council on Aging, effective immediately. Can we send a letter thanking her for her service? And talk to Margaret or whomever about filling that slot, unless they've already got someone.
Mr. Chairman?
Or
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Let's do public comments, citizens' comments. Anybody wishing to be heard on an item that's not on the agenda? Seeing none. Mr. Ruda.
Oh, I'll go. Mr. Valiakonis is fine.
Greg, before we do your report, we want to take the board's unanimous consent. We have a joint discussion with the planning board on the Tobin Farm subdivision, New Pond Dam.
Absolutely.
So we're going to take 10A out of order so the planning board can finish their business and go on their way. Greg, did you have this put on, or
I did not have it put on.
Mr. Horn?
I think Don asked
Oh,
Michelle to have it
planner?
on, yes. About the dam at New Pond. That we asked to have it put on their agenda.
Handout?
No, they have the handout, right?
Yeah, we have a hand up.
Yeah, so basically what happened was, we were approached by the treasurer stating that, there was an issue with, unpaid taxes on a piece of property that was attached with Tobin Farm subdivision. We're currently trying to finish up Tobin Farm subdivision and get it completed and accepted by the town. And when going through this, we kept coming up to this parcel. When you read the numbers from the parcel and you looked on Vision Appraisal, it said it was 2/10 of an acre. The treasurer and the assessor was more under the understanding it was a 3.5 acre parcel. And what we found out was basically right on the definitive plan that was submitted to the planning board and accepted for the subdivision, it states that the dam itself was deeded from Stevens Leonard to the town of Dudley, April 21st, 1995, and recorded in the Registry of Deeds, Deed Book 17037, pages 354 to 363. And then it goes on to state that the owners of the subdivision would give a deed to the town, which they did, I believe, in 2013. So there's really no back taxes for us to collect. The land was deeded to the town back in 2013, but my understanding is the town never filed the deed at the registry.
So, Greg, what would be the process? Did the town, it was deeded to the town, did the town accept that as a vote somewhere, or? You know what I mean, how would that?
It was a condition of accepting this plan, I'm sure.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
So typically, there's two avenues that are followed. One is any acceptance of land would require a vote of town meeting, or the Selectmen and Conservation Commission are authorized to accept land as a gift, so there would need to be an accompanying vote of the Board of Selectmen or the Conservation Commission if there wasn't a vote of town meeting. So one of those avenues has to be completed. Simply saying it's deeded over to the town, I question whether that's sufficient.
So where would we, under what records will we find any vote?
I honestly, this has not been high on my screen. I see Don here, and he's been spending a lot of time on it. So I asked Don to update you on this. This is not an area that I've been involved in. I will say that this town has a tremendous amount of liability with dams. We assumed ownership of a number of dams years ago. We're under consent orders to repair those dams, and the cost of those repairs will be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. My recommendation is we not accept any more dams unless it's something we already own.
Don, were you able to find a
I
vote?
haven't been able to find I haven't been able to find what process it went through, but there's a book and page reference in that excerpt from the plan that I copied. And that's where it's recorded, Registry of Deeds, so something must have taken place before that happened.
Oh, is that the copy we have? Because you're talking about this small piece?
Right.
Well, again, I guess Craig kind of answered. I'm just confused. It was deeded to the town, but if the town never accepted it, then the town shouldn't have ownership.
Yeah, that ultimately becomes a legal issue, Mr. Chairman. You're right. There needs to be some triggering events, which is a vote at town meeting or an acceptance vote by this board or the Conservation Commission to accept property.
So is the burden upon the subdivision owner to provide the documentation that showed a vote?
I think that's reasonable. Looks as though there's been quite a bit of work done by Michelle and by Mr. Johnson, and I wasn't able to find it. I'll defer again to Don, who spent a lot more time on this issue than I have. I apologize.
So what's the planning board's feeling? I mean, should the applicant have to provide documentation that there was a vote? I think so.
I would think so, in my opinion.
If the only way that the land can be accepted is through town meeting, then you'd have to go back to the town clerk and see if it was ever brought up as an article at the town meeting.
No, Guy, or a vote of this Board of Selectmen or the Conservation Commission.
Oh, so it doesn't have to go to town meeting?
No, the board has a right to accept land as a gift, so conceivably there would have been a vote of a prior board accepting the property as a gift. I don't know.
Okay, so in your office, there is a file that has a copy of the quitclaim deed. The town just never filed that deed. The owners gave the deed to the town back in 2013.
Yeah, but I guess the question is, just because they gave it, the town never officially accepted it, unless proven otherwise.
Right.
So
The town already owns the dam. The dam was given to the town in 1995. What the applicant gave you was the 3.5 acres of land that the dam is sitting on. So now you would own the land that is surrounding the dam. You wouldn't be trespassing on somebody's land to get to it.
So is there an easement to get to the dam, or is it that little piece?
I think the easement goes through the power line easement.
That's right, I think people use the power line easement to access the property, and the dam too, yes.
So the access would be off Sunset and that,
Yes.
204-foot wide easement?
Well, I think it's actually an 80-foot easement on my
It's
plan.
like 204.
80 on this.
Yeah, but what am I looking at here then?
That's this way.
Oh, 204. Frontage.
Oh, yeah.
215. But it still doesn't get you to the dam.
Gets you to we're talking about parcel 25.
Correct. So what do you go to this little piece here
Yeah, well, the other piece.
on this side?
Oh,
Well, Mr. Administrator, what do you think? Where do we stand? Someone has to prove that there was a vote, or is Mr. Horn right that we own it? We own the dam through that Stevens Linen transaction way back?
I guess if the deed was never recorded, I question ownership. I mean, it really is something that the fact that the town has acquired another dam somewhere along the way is just not good business. It's not good business for the town. And they said we're already under consent orders for a number of dams throughout Dudley that were acquired years ago on good faith that the town would benefit by owning these dams. And we're stuck with the cost of maintaining them.
You think you have legal look at it?
I think so.
Have KP look at it?
Yeah, we'll look
just
at it
gonna
and
say that.
review it and see what our options are. I think it really is a legal issue at this point.
So we need a vote for that, or can we just authorize you to
No, just authorize me to address it with council.
All right. have legal look at it
Yep.
and stay in touch with Don to your board?
If they need more information, we can. try to
We'll
figure
take
it
a
out.
look back through the records and see if we can find anything about the time the deed was recorded.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you can find out. If we do own the dams, which like I said, I remembered Stevens Linen. Remember that town meeting where the town took them. I mean, I don't remember every single one that they described. I didn't even know there was access to that dam existed, so.
Oh, no, I wouldn't have.
All right, so we'll leave it with legal, and we can continue this to the next agenda if we have more information. If not,
Yeah, it's the safe.
you guys find out in between, you have a meeting about it, and keep us in the loop.
In the meantime, we're gonna continue working with the developers to move along the subdivision. Not that we're gonna grant them any waivers or anything, but just move forward
Yep.
as best we can.
Right, because the acceptance can only be done at the spring meeting, and
Right.
the packet, Danny, what is it, January it's gonna be all in by? For acceptance?
January 31st, the deadline.
No acceptance at fall town meetings, spring only. Perfect.
That's, before.
That's the voice, okay.
There you go. This, and this. Okay.
All right, well, hopefully get some information.
Where the hell is this?
Yeah, did you read that?
Thank you.
Yep,
Thanks,
so thank you,
Guy.
folks.
Thanks, Pam. Thanks,
Have a
Dan.
nice night.
You too now.
Good night, thank
Thanks for
you.
coming in, you guys. Good luck with your new member.
Yeah.
All right, gonna go back to our regularly scheduled portion of the agenda. A town administrator's report.
Good evening. A couple things. So I mentioned to you at the last meeting, we were going to have an infrared scan of the roof of this building. We set aside money at town meeting in the spring to replace the roof on this building. And one of the issues that came up was whether we had to replace the insulation. And so the roof scan that was done confirms that at least 15% of the area under there has wet insulation. So they do the scan at nighttime. There's different temperatures associated with the roof depending upon whether it's wet or dry. And the results of it was that at least 15% of the underlying insulation is wet. So I will move forward in bringing on board an architect based upon what we consider to be worst case scenario, which is we need to replace not only the roof membrane, we also need to replace the underlying insulation. The project budget that was conceived should be sufficient to do everything. So we presumed worst case scenario, and we'll move forward on that regard. So that was the item that I was waiting for before we hired an architect. And we'll move forward with the assumption that the insulation needs to be torn up and replaced along with the roof products. And I have the report if anyone wants to see it. Next on my list was the cooling tower at the building is going to be installed next week. So we will be back and running with our HVAC system next week. Tower may show up this week and be in the back parking lot. So if you drive through there, that tower is the one that's going to be installed here next week. And then I also noted in the packet that Mr. John Meehan, the superintendent of the Water and Sewer Department, indicated his notice of retirement on August 31st of 2018. And the reason why I wanted to acknowledge that was to wish John well, but also to let you know that as the board had previously requested, we do a request for proposals for management or best practices study involving the highway department, but also the water and sewer departments. And in view of that resignation, retirement, it may make some sense to kind of accelerate the schedule on that project. And the reason being is the RFP, the way it was originally put together, had responses coming in the first week of August, which is fine. But we were going to hold off until town meeting in October to vote an amount of money and have the project completed by the end of November. And I'm guessing that if we have to not only fill Mr. Guyon's position, but we have to look at filling a position in the water and sewer department, it might make some sense to move that project up along the list. And just want to get some feedback from the board in terms of whether you think that's appropriate.
I had some dialogue with the town administrator about that, and I think, as he just laid it out, I think that makes sense. If we can move some monies around and then in the fall replenish wherever that money came from.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Are we gonna be in a situation where we need to get some interim management?
Yeah, so that's kind of the next step. We'll have to look at having a conversation with the water and sewer department. The board has indicated that they've been in touch with Mr. Fox, the chairman of the personnel board, about filling the position. My recommendation would be not to move too hastily in terms of permanently filling a position when there may be an opportunity to have it on an interim basis. And I can't conceive on any circumstance where someone leaving in 5 or 6 weeks, there's sufficient time to advertise and fill the position anyway, but that's just my view of it.
Mr. Massey?
Oh, I think it's good. I mean, we gotta make sure it gets done right, but I'd love to have a third party really review
Yeah.
this to
I think,
help
I
us
think,
make decisions.
I mean, I think that's something that we need a clear direction of where maybe changes need to be done. It makes some sense to have a new person come on board armed with that document.
Are you, Mr. Chairman, are we thinking in terms of like a one-year contracted person or
Well,
an inside interim hire or?
For which, Jay?
yeah, which one?
Yes.
Yes. So, so not only, originally we started off, Mr. Guyan will be leaving in October, and the application process to kind of merge these two conversations together. The application process is closed for superintendent. I went through and I looked at the applications. They were not great in number, but there are a few what I consider to be good candidates. It may make some sense, rather than pursuing a permanent hiring on that end, that we also look at bringing in an interim position in the highway department to bridge us until this report is completed. I think it's a prudent management decision. That would be my recommendation.
Now, I'm going to defer to Mr. Ruda for a minute, only because before, what happened last time, people torpedo the idea before it gets off the ground.
It's already started.
But I know Jonathan was kind of the impetus behind it, and, the intent is not to raid enterprise funds or, change ratepayers' schedule. It's just like I say, I'll defer to Jonathan, but the way it was presented, and we all generally agreed, it was just to bring an outside professional set of eyes that could go either way. They could come in and say, no, that makes sense to stay the way you are, or could say, yes, it makes sense to look at changes.
So the way we left it, Mr. Chairman, was I believe that part of the end of the discussion, last time we talked about a DPW, was that we needed to have an independent review, which never panned out. So this is actually bringing a joint discussion forward to where it should have been. I mean, independent review means just that. We're soliciting, we're going out to bid. We don't know any of these people who are applying.
Right.
It's going to be an impartial, independent
Professional.
review of best practices and see if we could do better, if we can do it better.
Right. But like I
I
said,
mean, I don't know how to be any less biased than that.
yeah.
If the answer is we should leave it the way it is, 100% for it. If the answer is we should do something differently, we take a look at it and be in, I could be swayed to be in favor of that as well.
Right.
I have no opinion except the two boards talking past each other. I'm not going to come up with any sort of answer at any point, so I think that's where we're at.
Right. Nor do I. I mean, I think it makes sense. It's a timing is perfect. And any time wouldn't be a bad time. But now, as Greg just stated, with the vacancies and maybe do things internally or interim. I say keep the ball rolling. Mr. Massey.
Agreed. Same. I just, we've been pretty open and transparent. It doesn't stop a lot of people from assuming the worst. I just assume positive intent on this one. It's time to really take a look at best practices and how do we do more with less in that manner.
If our water system is to the point where it's rumored that we can't do any more commercial tie-ins or any new commercial tie-ins, obviously, what do we have an economic development committee for? What's the point? Are we gonna just give up, or are we gonna move forward with it?
Right. No, the intent is to move forward, no doubt.
But, again, I just want to clarify that I think it makes sense to look at an interim person in the highway department. I really, that position is under your control, and my thought is in looking at the resumes, an interim superintendent makes sense to me, until we can really establish what the direction of the recommendations of this report will be.
Chairman.
Mr. Massey.
Greg, so what period of time would you recommend for an interim for that position?
I think we gave the consultant a period of 30 days to complete the report. So, it would make some sense at least through the end of the year, maybe the end of the year, calendar year, to look at interim services.
So you didn't mean like a one-year appointment or anything like that?
I mean, remember, we'll have to have a conversation with whoever's selected to do the study, because originally the study contemplated that it would be done in the month of November, and now we're saying we want to do it in August, let's say. So it's just a question of availability. We'll have that conversation. John, I kind of want to keep the options open at this
Sure,
point.
okay, no, I'm just curious. It does make sense in this case, because we don't want to have any, we don't want to have continuity of service for people, right?
Right.
Not some
In
major
Mis-
disruption.
Mr. Chairman, even if there is an overlap, you still have to have some sort of transition.
Transition, right, Jay?
Ian, I know, like, again, I had dialogue with Michelle and Greg both today and made sure that Water Sewer knew we were gonna talk about it tonight. There's no blindsiding. They're obviously gonna be in on any discussion going forward.
Yeah, I think when we sit down and we interview consultants to hire to do this study, I want to invite them and have them be part of that conversation. I want them to be comfortable with whoever's brought on board.
Right, and we're gonna fund it, we're not gonna fund it through rate users, we're gonna fund study. It's our idea, so we're gonna fund it. That was another question somebody brought up. We expecting water and sewer to kick in money towards the consultant. So as it stands now, it's something we're doing as a board.
So you would think the ratepayers would welcome an
I mean,
opportunity
it's
to be
two-thirds
efficient.
It's two-thirds of the report, but that's fine.
Listen, as
You would think.
a conversation progresses,
I know.
who knows what consensus we'll get, but as it stands now, I agree, you would
think,
think.
regardless of whether you're a ratepayer or taxpayer, you still have the same interest. Better services at less cost.
Okay, anything else on the report, Greg?
No, that's it, but I did want to bring that up because it was important to kind of tie it all together. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, please.
Next up, we have Around Town, focus on local business. We haven't had any for a couple months. I think with vacations could be winding down another month or so. We can start concentrating on that again.
Thank you.
License and permit, they're looking for an amendment on St. Andrew Babola Church, but as the board is currently construed, we can't vote on that at this time, so we have to postpone it to the next meeting, because you can't vote.
Just an amendment.
Oh, you don't have a majority of the board present.
We have time to do that.
Yes, we have plenty of time. That may be changing, but it hasn't changed yet, so.
Got it.
So we're gonna just put that on the next agenda, and hopefully we have majority present. We have a public hearing. We have a poll hearing for National Grid, number 261415557, Airport Road, National Grid, to install one SO pole on Airport Road beginning at approximately 0 feet at the center line of Airport Road, and as a noted, Woodstock Street, continuing approximately plus or minus 430 feet in a northwesterly direction. National Grid to install one new 40 C2 pole 4-2 and an anchor in the public way to service Webster First Federal Credit Union's new branch. And in the notes, it says National Grid refers to West Main Street as Woodstock Street from Airport Road to the Connecticut State Line, which is a new one on me. And I declare the public hearing open at 7:05.
Good evening, everybody. What we're asking for is that one pole across the street next to, to service the bank's new service. They basically have an underground service that runs under the road right now. We don't do that anymore, so we're gonna pull that wire, and all the other poles are across the street, so we have to bring one over, give them a transformer, and let them feed it underground from there. So that's why we're asking for it.
Could you just state your name for the record for us, please?
What was that?
Could you state your name for the record, please?
My name is Merrill Harvey.
Sorry. Please silence your phones. Sorry about that. Greg, any other information to add to the application?
None whatsoever.
As the highway superintendent, there's no concerns for the town? Public safety, no concern with the wires holding the pole in place? Anybody have any questions for the applicant?
Gotta keep the bank in power.
How about our obligatory, how the two poles, we're still working towards a resolution on the final few two poles, double poles?
We got that rolling though, didn't we?
Yes. Got it going?
I'm sorry to say that only two of the poles are ours, the rest are Verizon's.
Right.
We know that, but they don't come in front of us as much as you do, but maybe at some point we can catch them. Mr. Massey?
Well, there is one on Charlton Road, I noticed, that's leaning. I don't know if anybody's noticed this, heading towards Dudley.
Charlton Road?
Carlton Road. It looks like one of the guy wires is slack. It's like got, so maybe someone can look at that. Check it out.
Do you know which address it's in front of? I can take a run by it.
I don't know which address.
So just Charlton Road?
Tomahawk?
That's the big red house there with the big garage on the left.
Oh,
Heading
at the
towards-
top of the hill, as you're heading back down, you'll go
Okay.
left to
You
Shepherd
can't
Hill,
miss
right to
it.
Oxford.
You can't miss it. It's like this.
Okay, we'll take a peek at it.
What's that, Valley View Farm used to be there, on the left? Valley View?
Figured I'd mention it tonight just 'cause I
No, we
saw
appreciate
that.
it, thank you.
Yeah.
If you ever come across those, either get the poll number or an address that's right next to it. It's much easier for us to find.
Okay. Anybody here from the public that have questions towards the applicant for the poll hearing? Seeing none, hearing no questions from the board, I will close the public hearing at 7:08. What's the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the request for National Grid to install one SO pole on Airport Road
Second.
as written.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any further discussion here? All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Right?
Unanimous. Thank you for working with us on the other
you.
issues.
We'll do our best. Thank you. Thanks.
Have a good night, folks.
You too.
Good night.
Next up, we have a second public hearing. It's a continuation from our last meeting concerning secondhand vehicles, Bassiolis, hope I said that properly, auto sales, 238 West Main Street. Continue from 7/2/2018. The applicant is present tonight. Good evening. Can you identify yourself for the record, please?
My name is Shinudi Baselius. I have this one the last year, but under the other owner of the house. So I buy it. So right now, I bought the new name on it.
Okay, Greg, is all the paperwork in order?
Yes, so we have a report from the building inspector indicating that the zoning is in compliance, and the request is for 5 vehicles for sale. Is that correct, sir? 5?
Yes, 5 vehicles.
I love the plan. Is that drawn to scale?
I hope not.
So that's all he needed then, was to have the building inspector? and-
Correct, the building inspector need to do determination of whether it's allowable use. You can set a condition in terms of the number of vehicles that are on the site, or any other condition you feel is appropriate.
So you understand it can't exceed 5? 5 is the most?
No, not maybe less than 5.
Yeah.
Just, yeah.
Okay,
Just wants the ability to have it.
right, up to 5. Right. Any questions for the applicant?
Nope.
Mr. Marcy? Anybody in the public that is here for the public hearing that wish to speak? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing at, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Sorry. I apologize.
Last time there were cars.
One sec, just need you to,
Sorry, Melissa Robbins, 258 West Main Street. Last time there were cars for sale, the cars were pulling into our driveway to look at his cars on the lot. So I want to make sure there's good signage so that they know actually where the lot is and they're not pulling into my driveway. And number 2, how close to the street we plan on putting them because of all the trees there. We look down there to see the cars coming down 197 in order to be able to pull out. So if you pull them right up to the street, we're not going to be able to see the line of sight down the road.
Greg, is that conditions that we can ask for signage stating something to the effect, please?
No turning
Yeah.
here, or, yeah,
Right.
you can.
We can require him to.
You can.
Ian, can we put a requirement, cars must be, I don't know how far back, like I said, 35, 50, 10 feet off the road, can we,
That's fine. You have every right to do that.
should we make him install a fence, like 5 feet in or something, so he can't pull up?
You can do that, too?
How are we gonna determine if it's close enough?
Signage. See how it goes.
So they know
Jonathan?
it's not our driveway.
Try signage
I mean, I don't want to assign too much. Maybe he should work with the administrator and the police chief to make sure everybody's happy, pending a suitable arrangement.
All right, how about, if the board's pleasure, we instruct the administrator to work with the applicant and public safety officials to ensure the sight line isn't blocked and come up with some kind of signage asking no turns or something that,
Well, it just identifies that
right, his lot,
is next
yeah.
door to us. Because I don't think last time there was an actual sign out.
Right. So how about that, Greg? You think we can postpone the decision for 2 weeks and you guys can come up with,
Yeah, that's fine.
is that okay with public safety?
Yeah, we can do that.
Fire and EMS, police? Okay, so we're gonna postpone the vote for 2 weeks, just meet with Greg, and he'll come up with suggestions to prevent the sight line from being blocked, in some kind of language for a sign that says maybe like no turn, or, you know, whatever they come up with that satisfies
Can we
her
approve it
concerns.
pending some of those things?
You know, just a sign on his property stating that's where it's at.
Right, but we're worried about the sight line too, so if the car, we can come up with something to keep the cars back
Yeah.
5 feet or whatever, you know, just enough,
Right.
not make it burdensome. Well, what's the board's pleasure? Well, we have to close it first, then.
Yeah, we have to
Any other
close.
comments? Hearing none. Close the public hearing at 7:13. What's the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask the town administrator to help me with this one. I'll make a motion that the board grant preliminary approval, so it doesn't hold up Mr. Basilius' schedule, but it has to be pending an agreement between, ma'am, I'm sorry, I forgot your name,
Melissa Robbins.
between Melissa Robbins and the applicant. So send it for final approval for the next meeting.
And then also sight line issue, if police or EMS come up with an issue, like they want them back 5 feet, for example.
Right.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to grant preliminary approval pending those last couple housekeeping items. Anybody else have anything to add? Yep.
Laurie Jury, I'm adjacent on the other side. My biggest thing is you're not going to, in the future, be doing actual work on cars in that area? Okay.
Don't work on it there.
No, that's not part of his permit.
Because the last time when Robert had it, he did. They started out saying they were only getting cars in, but then they started doing work on the premises, and a lot of their car parts and grease and that was ending up in my yard. So I would like to make sure.
Yeah, their application is strictly for sales, not for repairs, and that's prohibited use.
Right.
Okay.
Right, so if you,
I never gotta work on it.
right, I mean, I,
Fine, as is. Obviously, if they fix anything, you're gonna fix it in the mechanic shop, not the front.
if that was to happen again, I would strongly recommend contact the building inspector or the selectman's office.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if it becomes an issue at any time,
All right.
please feel free.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yep. So motion and a second. Any other discussion? Really hearing none this time. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shinoda.
So we'll bring it up on the next agenda, assuming everything's completed for a final vote.
Yeah.
Perfect. Next up, public business. We already did 10A. We have 10B, Baker Pond. Discussion concerning the boat ramp. Greg, how would you like to handle this?
Well, I think we should kind of do a recap. I wasn't at the last meeting, so I'm a little bit of a, I want to recap the meeting that we had last week with some of the residents who are on Baker Pond and offer some suggestions to the board. But I wasn't here 2 weeks ago when you first discussed it. I'm guessing discussion was just deferred.
Yeah, it was limited.
So,
We actually would have preferred the full board, but
yeah, do you want to just give you a quick recap, or do you want?
yeah, I think the way I'm going to allow it, I think we had a meeting Friday, myself, town administrator, the highway foreman, with 3 members of the Baker Pond Association. A lot of good exchange on ideas, a lot of good information came forward that I don't think we had previous. So I'm going to open up the meeting and let the town administrator give like a little synopsis. At that point, I might let the Baker Pond folks, as we discussed at the meeting, we're going to have only 2 or 3 representatives of their pond association. I'm not going to say anybody can't talk, but if it starts getting repetitive, We're going to move on, then we'll have general comments from the public with issues they may have or issues that may arise after Greg
So
gives the synopsis.
I think, just in quick summary, there was a decision that was made by the Conservation Commission back in April to limit access to the pond. Although access is still allowed, access has never been denied. It's the question is what type of access, and trailered boats have not been allowed to use the site. But the concerns that the town had is that the public does have access to the site, and persons who are able to bring in kayaks and smaller boats with electric motors would still have access to the site. We also want to guarantee that the police and fire departments have access to the pond in the event of an emergency, and we were through that meeting assured that we would have that access. One of the things that we learned in our conversation was that there's been a substantial commitment made by the association. They spent $52,000 for weed control, and then they have a 5-year program going forward, upwards of $116,000, all funded privately to deal with the weed situation on the pond. I think they were pretty adamant in terms of the resource of the pond is valuable, and that the milfoil and fanwort are problematic and will be introduced if there aren't some controls made with regard to access. We don't have the ability to man a boat ramp, and that's not an option, so it's not a recommendation that I would make. But I certainly saw the point by the association that there's been an effort made to control an invasive weed situation that's there. They're spending money, they're spending private money from the residents to be able to do that. Public still can access the pond, although not necessarily with trailered boats. They still have an opportunity to access it by hand carry or carry-in issues. And then again, the access would be provided to the police and fire departments.
One of the things that was provided to us was a copy of the deed, which covers the area, I believe, where the paved ramp and the gravel ramp is located. And one of the conditions that was recorded was restrictions shall be administered by the Conservation Commission of the said town, established under Mass General Laws, Chapter 40, subsection 8C. So, obviously, the issue came before us, Greg. How much actual control would we have once that document was provided?
Very little, because the deed specifically puts forth the Conservation Commission as being responsible for that property.
And also, the highway foreman and superintendent both confirmed that the reason, I guess Danny could come up and explain better than me, but the impetus behind that paved section started, what, Danny, 25 years ago, because the road was eroding a little bit on the edge, so the town put a little bit, then a little bit.
Yeah, it was, Mr. Chairman, it was probably a good 25 years ago. People were, using that graveled area for a boat ramp, and over time, the gravel was starting to undermine the asphalt, so every time we had a little bit of colder asphalt left over at the end of the day, we'd try to patch up the edge of the road, but it just kept getting worse and worse, so we kept going further and further and further, and finally, the boat ramp got completely paved.
Right, because it was never, I haven't been around that long, but it was never, the town never went up there and said, we're gonna just pave a ramp. It was done to try to protect the edge of the roadway, and as you said, it just got further and further because it just kept eroding. So.
Mr. Sullivan, the only other thing I'd add is there was quite a bit of information presented in terms of the fact that there are steps to prevent invasive species. Ram's Horn Pond in Millbury, and Moosehead Pond, and then in Hubbardston and Browning Pond in Paxton all have some restrictions. They do work. It was pointed out to us that if you look at a map, Ram's Horn Pond in Millbury is very close to Singletary, and the Singletary is loaded with invasive weeds, but the pond where they've taken action is not, and that speaks for itself in terms of whether it works or doesn't work. There's no safe season. A question I had for the residents was whether there was quote-unquote a safe season, and really learned that there's not a safe season for boats coming out.
Right, and one of the issues put forth, and I think it was backed up by the presentation, and I think it was more towards like stuff that's come down through the years through DCR and things similar to trails that used to be open to ATVs. It was an allowed use, and then when people found it was destructive or causing issues, those trails were blocked. And it was just a evolution, I guess, of, back in the day, it was a walking trail or a bike, and next thing you know, ATVs, and which was a similar, being used as a similar example to what's happening to not just this pond, other ponds. And as the administrator stated, Baker Pond folks brought forward 3 or 4 different ponds that have done that, and it seemed to mitigate the issues effectively.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask the fire chief to come up for a minute? Chief, can you do a water rescue right now with that?
Not very effectively. I went to the Conservation Commission, when was it, last month? June was their last meeting, and I explained, I'm not here to determine whether boats should be on the water or not, but life safety is my job. Right now, we can't effectively perform a water rescue because people just don't understand the amount of equipment we need to get in the water in a short amount of time. I'm not going through somebody's backyard. I'm not driving equipment over somebody's lawn. It's not going to happen because that's how equipment gets stuck or damaged or makes the rescue potentially worse. But I have no problem. They want to close it, by all means close it. That has nothing to do with the fire department, but use a gate or use a cable that has a lock that we can have access to. And if the cable's an issue, put PVC pipe around the cable and paint it a bright color or something, so if there's any issue there. I just saying that's a compromise where both the boats would be restricted, but we could have access in case of an emergency.
Right, that was a question that came up, Chief. It was myself, I think, it was a 2-part question. What if the incident's on the Charlton side and somebody calls 248, you won't even get the call, so we can't just do anything without letting Charlton know, and I suggested the Baker Pond folks contact both fire and EMS. And
They did.
police.
Somebody emailed me. I don't know if they're here tonight, but
I think they are.
I pretty much wrote the same response in the response to my email. Like I said, that's up to them if they want to close it or not. That's not for me to determine. It's just I want to have access in case of an emergency. I mean, we have to put motorized boats in the water potentially. We have to put potentially a hovercraft if it's the winter time.
You put divers in if you have to.
Divers with a lot of equipment, a lot of manpower, and you're just not going to access through somebody's backyard. You need a paved surface to get into that if possible.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, was there a plan from the Baker Pond Association, Charlton or Dudley, to get a rescue boat on that pond, or did that escape everybody?
No, that question was asked. Like I said,
Well, there was one, I have the address in my book, but I haven't gone up there and looked, but again, it's more difficult than people realize to just go through somebody's driveway and try to sneak equipment through their backyard and things of that nature. It just doesn't work. You end up sinking equipment. I mean, the equipment's heavy,
Right, it is.
especially the vehicles that are towing it.
Right, and that did come up, like I said, what if the emergency call went into Charlton? And, one of the committee members from Baker Pond said, well, we have people that allow access. And my answer was, well, if you're one of them, we call, you're not home. Now we're going to call the next one. Just to try to find it. So
That's unscalable.
Right, that's why I said get the public safety officials in both towns involved.
That's what put a bad taste in my mouth, Mr. Chairman, is that we had a dialogue at one point about this, and a couple of weeks ago, we found out there were boulders across it so that we couldn't rescue somebody who might need to be rescued.
And you know what? It may never
I don't
happen,
want
but
to be back
it
here
might.
at this point, but
It could.
I can't imagine how that discussion turned into, the hell with you, we're doing it.
Right, I mean, I had some dialogue, and I know Mr. Massey did with at least one member of that board, and, very apologetic, didn't mean to step on our toes. I think they kind of interpreted the sign up there that says conservation, the deed said conservation. I think they thought they were doing the right thing, and as Greg indicated at that meeting, I don't want to speak for Greg, but similar to what you just said, that was the issue at that last meeting. We were kind of left out of the loop. And I take them at their word. I don't believe it was deliberate. I mean, I even told one of the committee members that I don't think there's gonna be long-term anger from our board at that. It just was very, very surprising and frustrating at the time that, you know, part of it, us too, we never got a word from our conservation committee saying, oh, by the way, Baker Pond's been a kind of a hot issue, they came to us.
Especially since it had been discussed prominently at Board of Selectmen's meetings, over a period of 3 meetings.
Yeah, over a year. Last year it started. So
That's right.
I don't think there was intent, but it was very extremely frustrating, which I definitely passed along, and I think the message was received.
Do we, Greg, do you recall, I thought we took a vote to have those boulders removed.
We did. Oh, no, it was
It was decree.
it was a directive.
Decree.
But, and then I should have probably notified the board once I was given, after that last meeting, or 2 meetings ago, I was given the Matt Morrow letter about not to do it, and then the question about did conservation have that right to say that because of the restrictions, so I contacted the highway superintendent and just asked him to please hold off.
The next.
What was the reason not to do it, Mr. Chairman?
Because I was given information after the meeting with the letter from Matt Morrow, Environmental Consulting.
Does that, I mean, I can't imagine that trumps the ability for him to get votes on that, like if you need to save somebody.
I would say probably not, but then it falls back upon, do we even have control over the easement? If it's governed by conservation and they say put the boulders, does that mean conservation has to take them up?
I did go to the,
You wanna go out on
Mr.
the
Chair, I
roof.
did go to the conservation meeting in June and said the same thing. Like I said, I don't have a problem with them closing it. I don't care if they close it, just
Right.
use an alternative means.
We need better access. Alternative mean to give you the access.
Meaning a cable, like I just
Right.
described, or a gate. If a gate's too expensive, I think the cable would do the trick. And like Danny had stated earlier, the cable may not be allowed, but I think if you put the PVC pipe through it and painted a bright color or something and just have a padlock on one side, it would restrict all the boats. All the Baker Pond people would be satisfied, and I'd be satisfied that I could successfully save somebody if there was a water incident.
Right.
I make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
We'll still don't let the other people
In
come up
public
first.
hearing still?
Well, it's not really a public hearing, but I want to let the Baker Pond folks come up, and I think we have other people that want to speak. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I as well responded back to the Baker Pond folks about not really having a concern if they want to close it or not. I think, again, the fire department would have a bigger concern about the vehicles and things going on there. Biggest thing from our end was we were never really notified about any of these things that were going on. So we're fielding phone calls all over the weekends about, hey, there's boats in the pond and they're not supposed to be there and they're trespassing and everything else like that. So that's so whatever happens, again, if it's closed, it's fine by me, whatever you want to do. We just need some clear guidance from whoever it is as far as what's going to be allowed, what's not going to be allowed, and we'll take it from there. But I think that's just a point of information. I just wanted
Right,
to
there was
know.
some confusion too, one sec, that when this all happened, I got a phone call, and I contacted the administrator. It was a weekend because someone said, oh, DEP mandated it. I said, DEP mandated it? So I contacted Greg, and I'm not sure who contacted the chairman of conservation, and it wasn't DEP, it was on the recommendation of the town's conservation agent. But as you said, the phone calls were already going. The phones were going crazy, and
Sure.
and again, it takes on a life of its own. Mr. Massey?
So Chief, who were you getting calls from about the?
I don't know, I could look up
Were
the
they
names,
residents
but I think
of
they
the
were
lake?
residents, yeah, because I think part of it was that there was signs posted about there's no boat access onto the pond,
Okay.
and
I
and
get
those
it, but
things.
this is the kind of thing, I mean, how do you police this? You know, is everyone gonna have binoculars up? That's not a resident, they're gonna be gone. Someone has to come kick them out. How do they get the boat on the lake?
Well, if the
Can't have this.
Well, if the gate's up, they won't be able to access it.
Well, I know, but, you know, going on there, it's, you know, pointing fingers, he said, she said, you don't.
No, I understand.
How do you manage this? Who's in charge?
Here's the question is, Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to figure out the area there, but there is no access from the Charlton end, is that what we're to understand?
There's no public boat ramp, any access on the Charlton side at all. That's how we were told.
Is there anything at any of the, on Causeway Shores or anything else at the dead-end streets that lead right into the pond, or is that, I'd have to go up and look at the area again to determine what's
I think
there.
it's all private. I think some of those houses are close to the edge, and I think there's enough of a slope they can put boats in. I
Well, I
mean,
guess that's the only issue, is that I understand the fire chief's point. It's exactly correct, is that, you know, if you conduct one of these operations, you bring in a lot of people, a lot of vehicles and everything else like that. And so if somebody was to assume the access rights to the fire department or anybody to use their property, the town can't be held responsible for any damages that take place. That's just gonna have to be understood up front. So whatever the decision is made by the powers that be, that's just something that everybody would have to understand ahead of time.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, chiefs. Any other questions from the board? Have the Baker Pond people come up, answer some questions, or make their case?
Literally like one person on each side.
Well, yeah, we asked them, like I said at the beginning, Wayne was one of the people, and Mrs. Mason came forward, so we asked them.
Right.
Like I said, everyone has the right to speak, but if we start getting the repetitive information, you know, we're gonna just accept and move on.
Yes, I'm Wayne Markey, member of the association. I'm on the Charlton Lake and Pond Committee and so forth. So in regards to the fire and police chief's access to the pond, we did notify your side as well as the Charlton side. We did hear back from the Charlton fire chief, and he's in total agreement with the with your side that a gate or a chain across there would be suitable. That there should be access for multiple vehicles, and that certainly is the best site on the pond for that. So we're in total agreement to remove the rocks from you know that the paved ramp and put up a chain or a gate. And Mr. Marcy, you know, when you said, you know, who's going to monitor whether or not they have a trailer or whatever, I mean, really, with the rocks in place right now, you can't get a trailer in there.
No, I know, but you see the problem, somebody's getting boats from private land and people are calling and complaining about them. Like, this could mushroom, that was
yeah,
my point.
I think...
How do you tell, it's like the Dudley Beach, how do you say who's a resident, who's not, right? It's Dudley resident only.
Yeah, I mean, I think really, you know, there'll be signs posted there as per the, you know, the Conservation Commission's
Sure.
recommendations and Matt Morrow's recommendations as your paid agent. And I think once, you know, really, once the gate is up there, the public access for the emergency situation should be fine. And I mean, it was an unfortunate circumstance that, you know, those were blocked and there wasn't a lot of communication between departments. And you know, I guess, you know, I'd offer our apologies, but it's probably more of a town board issue. So we certainly, you know, appreciate the efforts of the town, the cooperation of the town to restrict the access. I'm not only a resident, pond resident. I know we've got some folks that have used that ramp for bass fishing. I've been in Bass Club for 37 years. I had a tournament as recently as Saturday. And I think that it's sometimes difficult to see both sides of the issue. As the administrator pointed out, you know, we're really strapped on cash right now. You know, we had to come up with, you know, with $50,000 this year. We had residents pledge, you know, between $1,000 and $2,000, which hopefully will get paid back over the next 4 or 5 years. So we now have 2 invasive weeds out of the 9 bad invasive weeds. And I mean, just Saturday I was at the Connecticut River. They now have water chestnut, which is a pretty bad one. And for the heck of it, I looked up Lake Champlain, the southern end, just the very southern tip of Lake Champlain, is infested with that. And what they do is they harvest it and put it into dump trucks. The budget for that on an annual basis now is over $700,000. In 2014, they removed over 1,000 tons of that weed. So far, up until 2014, they had spent $11.4 million to remove the weeds. And I think, you know, from the fisherman's side, we don't always appreciate what those costs are. We simply want to get onto the waters. And I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. I've got a whole list of places that I used to be able to put a boat trailer in that are now carry-in or completely closed. Quabbin is a great example of that. You're highly restricted as to what kind of boat you can put in there. And times have changed. It's like you mentioned, you know, ATV and dirt bikes just aren't allowed on the Dudley trails anymore. I used to take a bike in the Wachusett Reservoir, and that's restricted now. When I was a kid, we used to go the Truro beaches with a beach buggy, and we didn't realize we were, you know, killing birds, nesting birds and turtles and all that. You just can't do that stuff anymore. So I can appreciate the bass fishermen looking at that, and you know, all fishermen looking at that and saying, "Boy, you're really hurting our opportunity to do it." And I guess to that, I would say, you know, you can still have a kayak tournament. There still are some things that, you know, we're not saying no one should access it. What we look for is sustainable use of it, and it's not a problem that's going to go away. It's only going to get worse. There's going to be more and more restrictions. So I don't want to take too much of your time. I can talk for a long time.
Well, you made a compelling argument the other day, and I think you just kind of synopsed it pretty good. I mean, we don't have to go through all the ponds, but Greg touched on a few, and as you said, I'm sure there's a list a mile long. On both sides, there's a list a mile long that says, keep bringing your boats, and there's some that say, no, not anymore. Mrs. Mason.
Thank you.
You all set?
I am, yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
I couldn't hear that last part.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Yep. At this point, I'll open up to any other comments. The gentleman that were here at the last meeting, would like to come up again?
Appropriate shirt.
I'm Camille Jaskowski. I was here 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
My friend Nick couldn't make it tonight. He got stuck working.
My name's Kyle Miller, Dudley resident.
I was just, you know what to say.
Can you pull that a little closer? Because
yeah.
we can hear you, but the people at home won't be
Just
able to.
the lake I've been fishing since I was a little kid, and just seeing it just taken away, it just really frustrates me. Like, that would be nice to come to terms, make the lake maybe Dudley Charlton residents only, not like totally close the access off to everybody. Maybe keep some out-of-town people out and just local people. It'll cut down the number of boats by a lot. It's something I just don't want to lose the lake totally. And even with a gate or a cable, say if I'm there to go with a non-trailer boat by myself, it's a pain to carry. What am I going to drag it down the hill, down the pavement, or down the rocks? Like if I don't have someone to go with, I fish alone all the time, and that's not easy access. Now I have to park at the top, or my father wants to go, or somebody older wants to go that can't really handle a boat by themselves like that. Like how are they supposed to get on the lake? How are they supposed to have access, even if it is, you know, stays restricted to small boats only?
Mr. Massey?
How do you access the lake now?
I used to use the ramp, but now
With what kind of boat?
I have a 21-foot bass boat, but I also used to fish when I was younger. I used to fish the lake out of a small boat only, but I would back up to the lake and just pull the boat out of the back of the bed and drop it right in the water, and it would be simple by myself. But I couldn't do that by myself, and I'd just bang the boat up. I'd drag a hole through the bottom of the boat like I've done before at other places that have been taken away that I have to have harder access to now.
Mr. Miller?
Yeah, I just agree with him. You know, it's a place that I've fished a while, and as far as like the ramp being closed to only the police and fire and stuff like that, as far as the boats that are on the lake from the town residents, or not the town residents, the lake residents themselves, they have larger boats. Sure, they might not come off the lake as much or as often as our boats would, but they come off. So the millweed or the invasive species that they're afraid of getting into the lake, their boats do it too. If it even comes from the boats, which there's a lot of different types of facts that prove that it's not only the boats, it's a lot of wildlife. Most of the lakes in Dudley and around Dudley are connected through rivers. and the invasive species can get in through those rivers, through fish carrying them, birds carrying them, things like that. So I don't believe that the boats are the only issue, especially from people like us who we fish multiple lakes around everywhere from Charlton, Dudley, Brookfield, Webster. I can tell you personally, my boat gets cleaned every time it comes off a lake. I wash the trailer, I wash the boat, ensure that there are no weeds on it. If there are weeds, you leave them at the lake that they were on. So I think that there could be a better solution than just closing off the ramp to everybody versus that.
Right, that was brought up at the meeting too, and about other ways for the invasive species to travel. And one of the issues that was brought up by Mr. Marquis was sometimes it's the carpet on the trailer. You might do a great job cleaning your boat, cleaning your prop. It sits on that carpet, and then when you back it in, he said, obviously the only way to do it, he said, is to lift the boat and do all the carpet, and even then, there's no guarantee. And it was brought up about wildlife bringing it in, and can it travel through other waterways? And the agreement was it was, but I think statistically it proven it's a greater chance coming off a boat than other scenarios. Not that they don't exist. Everybody agreed they do exist. Could come from a bird, could come from just floating downstream, as you stated, And we brought up the issue of, is it Pierpont? Hayden Pond, one of them has the cap, like a check valve that the water can flow out, but it can't flow back. And obviously we can't, that was done by private association. We can't, as a town, we can't afford somehow to check valve every dam. As Mr. Valcuna said, we're already under consent decrees just to repair leaks. I mean, I can't imagine what the cost would be, but they've done that years ago. That prevents water from flowing back. And there's no public access except on the Hayden Pond Road, where you can just park on the side and you just maybe, like you say, carry something in. You can't even put motorized
Hayden
boat
Pond's
in.
another one that got taken away too.
Right.
There used to be a ramp, there used to be access, and they chained that off too. It's like, what's the point of even fishing around here anymore? Everything's slowly getting taken away, and before you know it, what are we gonna have? Nothing. We're gonna have nowhere to go. Each pond, one at a time, is getting either a public lake somehow becomes private, or they just take it away.
Right.
It's
And
frustrating to see that happening.
It was brought up that Webster Lake now has the invasive mussel.
Asian mussels.
Asian mussels in Webster Lake. I mean, that was unheard of 10 years ago, I think, I would say. 15 maybe, now it's...
They're in the Great Lakes,
Yeah, they're in Webster Lake now. So that's our problem. I mean, I talked to the administrator before the meeting. I said, it's deeded to the conservation. I said, the easy thing for us to do is just kick the can to conservation, let them... But we're in charge of public access, and I'm sure conservation would take the emergency services into consideration and do whatever they required.
Since this,
That's
Mr.
not-
Chairman, since this is considered a great pond, I mean, no matter what the deed or the access is, I don't think we can control what happens on the lake, right? It's a public body of water over a certain size. That's one of my things, and I'm struggling with that.
I know we control access on Merino Pond. There's no ramp there. We actually own 7 acres. I think it's 7 acres off of Flaxfield. I know we own a big piece off of Flaxfield that at one time the planning board was talking about putting a little beach there. I mean, we control access there. We have a gate at the end of Lakeview, right? As a Lakeview chief, they can't even get on the town beach. We control that access. So there's nowhere to put a boat on Merino unless you have a friend that lets you put it in. I don't know if that's bigger than Baker Pond, but
Merino's smaller than Baker.
it's smaller
Pond.
Baker. Yeah, Baker's a little bigger.
Yeah.
And Merino's what, 74?
That's like, what, 700 acres?
Something like
How
that.
big is
Yeah.
That's right,
Baker's,
it's a lot
Baker's a
bigger.
little bit bigger than Merino. Yeah.
So I don't know, Mr. Ruda, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I don't dispute the Conservation Committee's duty to protect natural resources and watershed and all that.
Mhm.
No question about it, but, we have a duty to protect human life. If somebody's drowning, we need to get our fire department there and any other public safety issues that may arise with the police or fire department, so, I'm happy to send this back to Conservation Committee and tell them to find a way for the public to still, at least Dudley residents, be able to access the pond. If they recommend it not being motorized, then I will go along with that, but non-motorized craft need to be able to get on there and be able to use the pond. We have competing interests here. The way I look at it, I have one responsibility, and that's to make, a primary decision that we can get public safety onto the pond if necessary. That's going to be my first goal, secondary to natural and watershed resources. So I'll make a motion first that,
Let me see if there's any more comments. Mrs. Mason.
you're killing me, Smalls.
Sorry, well, people want to, like I said, we're going to just be careful on that.
Linda Mason, again.
Good evening.
I feel it's important to point out that we're not denying access to people to fish. Anybody can come from anywhere, another state, to fish in the pond. We're just trying to keep the weeds out, and in order to do that, we have to keep out the trailered boats. So if people want to fish, it's there to fish. Just bring your kayak, canoe, your small aluminum boat that you can carry in with an electric motor. Please, just come and fish, and we're not denying that to people.
And I sympathize with Mrs. Mason, but I think that's a Conservation Committee issue, and I don't think we solve it by putting boulders across the lodge.
Did not.
That's,
Right.
that's like, that's not gonna work.
No, they're gonna have to do so, they're gonna have to, we can obviously take care of the problem for them, but they're gonna have to come up with a better solution.
That's their jurisdiction per this deed.
No,
So
that-
we'll look at it.
If I could just add just a couple of things. One, the Great Ponds Act says that in a body of water that's greater than 10 acres, that the public shall have access for fishing and fowling, for hunting. Kayak, canoe access completely meets that. And the second thing is that it's from the Mass Department of Conservation and Recreation. They do have something called a Rapid Response Plan for fanwort, and I'll just read a couple sentences from that. Where the invasion is occurring at a boat ramp, closure of the ramp may be justified. This will both limit the spread of fanwort and generate public awareness of the problem and a desire to take action against the fanwort. The town may take such action where the public welfare is deemed to be at stake for the boat or a boat ramp owned by the town. So there certainly is justification from DCR to do that, and I think we're certainly looking at that. Canoe, kayak, carry-in access is really probably, I guess, more lenient than the original recommendation from Matt Morrow. Matt then kind of amended things, and the Conservation Commission voted for that amendment to allow for limited access. But again, I sense the frustration. I've got a list of ponds that I used to fish that are closed off, and it's frustrating on one end. On the other end, we're looking at spending $15,000 every year until the end of time because you never eradicate this stuff. You simply manage it. And if we happen to get another one in there, again, I think you're going to lose the pond for all uses. Thank you.
Yep. Saw her hand up in the back.
Basically, if you're a president, you get to have your own vote.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Richie, how are you?
Richard Beckwith. I'm a resident of Dudley, Mass. I've been fishing Gore Pond, Baker Pond, however you want to call it. I've been fishing that for 4 generations. My great-grandfather, my grandfather, my father, me, and now my grandkids are going to want to fish. It's something that's near and dear to my heart. There's not many places left in town to really go fishing anymore, unless you want to travel. So on that part, I mean, that used to be a dam years ago. It was a field before it was even any water there. But my thing, if you're going to make it a carry-in only, I know everybody here is a taxpayer, and I know it's the private citizens upon the pond. My thing is, if you're going to make it carry-in only for us and no motor, there shouldn't be any motors for the residents on that lake either. My opinion. There's a lot of ways that you can go about it. You can, you could sell stickers to people with their vehicles, you know, which could help pay, which could go back to their organization, which would help pay for some of the, you know, cleanup and help. Like I said, it's just near and dear to my heart, and I really hate to see it go as far as recreational. It's, the other question I had too was the boats that are on there now. Do those boats ever come off that water and go to another lake? And then come back to that lake? So if that's the case, how are we gonna watch that? If they decide they wanna go on vacation to Maine or somewhere, take their boat, come back, and then go back on the pond water, there's no difference, right? So, I mean, there's gotta be a way to work this out fairly for everybody in the town, and I'm hoping I'm speaking for a lot of others that aren't here.
Well, that was brought up at the meeting on Friday, and the people that were there for Baker Pond, they admitted that there probably boats do travel and come back. But their opinion, and for what it's worth, was that the majority are in the water for the season there, just for their use on that lake, and then they pull them up in the fall. Most don't travel, but I'm sure some do. I mean, it's only natural. Like you said, they go on vacation, or like Mr. Marquis said, he goes for a fishing tournament somewhere else. I'm sure he takes his boat. I'm sure he doesn't.
My nice expensive Ranger, has never been in the pond in 4 years at all.
Oh, you have a separate boat you take? He has a separate boat. I'm gonna, wait, you know what, I'm just gonna ask if people wanna engage, they should just go outside. No apology needed, just, we're trying to keep it moving forward. When I see, Mr. Beckwith makes excellent point too, you know. Mr. Administrator, I saw Mr. Ruda was going with his motion, do you think that's an apropos motion?
Our interest is public access for the police and fire departments. We need to ensure that we have public access. I understand the idea of selling stickers, but we just don't have the resources to police that. You can have plans, but if you don't have the resources to staff it, then it doesn't work.
Like, what would be a chief? What would be a fine if someone didn't have a sticker to go on the pond? Like, how could you could go up there and wait till the guy comes off and say, "Don't come back again"?
Figure it out. I think
there's no fine structure in place. There's
Mr.
no
Chair,
mechanism.
I think you have to do like they do in Webster. They have they have someone who's appointed, who has police powers, who's out on the water, and they have an adopted system of rules that's been approved, so that if there's a fine, there's a legal basis for issuing the fines.
So instead of Northwoods law, it's South County law kind of thing.
Someone's gonna be there to enforce it.
I know Webster Lake has someone that's out there and
Oh, yeah.
duly sworn and has police powers, et cetera.
They have someone at the ramp too. I
In
think.
Maine, it's the wardens, the game wardens.
They have someone at the ramp too. I think preventing.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
So, with the stickers, I mean, that could be run through, I'm not sure, but maybe through the police station. So, I don't know how they're patrolling it now, but I know there's been a lot of calls coming in that people aren't rinsing their boat or not washing their boat. So, how is that being caught?
It's not.
Versus seeing a sticker on somebody's window, a fluorescent orange sticker, and they see the sticker, they know it's them. But if it's not a boat, then they make the call, somebody comes out, puts a ticket. Because it would be posted saying that it's resident only.
Well, like Mr. Massey said, it's not being done now. It's not prohibited. You know what I mean? If someone's up there from Charlton, Dudley, sure they're potential residents, but if somebody from Webster goes there or Brookfield, there's no mechanism to stop them now. You know what I mean? It's Mr. Massey.
So, Mr. Ruder's right, public safety is number one. Obviously, we always, as this board, care for the well-being of everybody in town. For me, number two is also, again, this is a natural resource. I want Dudley residents to have access to it somehow. I just do. That's how this works. I'm a lakefront owner. I have a boat up in Maine, and we find a way to do it. But
your lake's 4,000 acres.
it's 4,500 acres. It's a hell of a lot bigger than Baker Pond, and it brings another set of issues. But if I just caution everybody, I understand. You got to see how a lot of people will see this as it's a not in my backyard issue. I understand we got to control weeds. I care about that deeply in my lake, right? You have these natural weeds that are in there that make a mess and they get in the way and they look like an invasive species, but they're not. They're from there. As the lake clears up, the sun can reach the bottom, stuff grows, right? That's the problem I've had. So I'm in there pulling stuff. I get it, but I caution people, especially residents who have boats on the lake, if they're really worried about trailers. I mean, the Conservation Commission might listen to that and say, okay, well, that's the answer. There's no motorized boats with trailers. There's no trailers. So everybody's gonna be ready to deal with that, right? So I caution everybody, but Dudley's got to be known for something that, like we did with the beach. We're trying to, Dudley residents should have access to that pond somehow. I don't know how we do that yet. That's why your motion, Mr. Ruda, to bring it back to conservation to really figure out what's going to be acceptable on that lake.
Well, I didn't make my motion yet.
Well, I think that's where you were going before Sully said, "Hold on."
Oh, because people are.
I didn't mean to take your words out of your mouth.
So, before I close out conversation, should we, in a short-term solution, go back to the decree and open up at least one of those access points for public safety purposes? Can we even do that after conservation, who has the deeded right to block it? Can we countermand them?
We can work with them in terms of providing some type of gated access, as the fire chief indicated. I think that's the most critical item.
But seeing how conservation has control and they voted to block it with rocks.
Yeah, well, that's kind of a simple, easy approach to limiting access. But realistically, that doesn't work. It sounds okay until you have a tragedy in the lake. So.
It's not, that's a wholly broad brush.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of wiggle room there.
They have the order to protect the natural and watershed resources of said town. A restriction shall be administered by the Conservation Commission. It doesn't say restrict access to residents.
Oh, no, that's what I'm saying. Obviously, that was a...
Yeah.
It doesn't.
I wasn't present at that meeting, but obviously...
They've interpreted it that way.
Well, we're not interpreting it that way.
I'm not interpreting it that way.
So, I guess my point would be, do we send them a strong message that we're not in favor of boulders, obviously, and we recommend they come up with a better solution that's more palatable to public safety first, resident, or access second. I agree with both my members, public safety, and I'm sure you folks do too. You guys probably see or have seen tragedies on the lakes. That's got to be
lately.
That's got to be paramount.
I agree.
So,
Mr. Chairman, we have a lot of the associations here. You want us to be able to rescue you if something happens when you're out on the lake, I would assume, right?
yeah.
Until you do.
Until there's boulders across the
Until
thing.
there's boulders across the ramp, right?
My house has never burnt down either.
We are totally in agreement.
Right.
There should be a gate or a chain. Fire and police from both towns can access. We're totally agreement.
Right, I think,
Okay, all right.
I'll take a motion, but I think,
Nobody's disputing that.
I'll take a motion, but, I asked the administrator earlier about conservation. I know Jonathan says it's a broad brush. I think we should somehow, I'm not steering it, you can make any motion, anybody can make a motion they want, but we should at least, outside of a motion, we should send some sort of, strongly worded, it's probably wrong, come up with a better means for access. Public safety first, and then access second for general public.
Or even Dudley Charlton, somebody
Right.
made it.
And as Richie said, like you said, be prepared. They may come back and say, this is a good idea, no motorized boats. And
I've
then-
seen it happen.
And then what do we do?
The smaller ponds in Maine, the 10.
Then what
I've
happens?
seen it happen.
Sir,
I just want to say the same thing what Rich said.
can you just tell
good
us,
evening, but
tell us who you are, please?
Emil is my son, and he was already saying that since a little kid, he was fishing there, and I was like teaching him how to fish on Baker Pond or the Marino Pond. And even if you guys gonna put a chain, some kind of gate with the lock, only the police or fire station gonna have the lock, the key to it. If I wanna go privately, go fishing there with my small 12-foot aluminum boat, I'm not gonna have an access to go there. And I was been fishing there with the kid for years since I remember. When he was still in the kindergarten, I was like teaching him how to fish on that lake, and now we won't be able to go there anymore.
Right. I mean, that's, and, again, that's the balance that we may be trying to reach, and we have no ultimate say. We could say, take the rocks, let everybody on the lake, and conservation can say, no, that's not the way it goes. So,
For that access point.
right, and that's the only public, I'm no expert. Last week, we took the conservation restriction on that 25 acres off of West Main, and sometimes, like Mr. Wheelock said, it's boilerplate. They put in there, no, 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 no. I mean, there's 6 different subsections, and, and one of them, the last one says, no activities detrimental to drainage, flood control, water, or soil conservation or erosion shall be allowed on the granted premise. I mean, again, that's kind of broad. Did the ramp, as Mr. Guyon indicated, started off as a couple of feet, next thing you know, it's...
If you made it small enough for a certain type of boat could
Right.
get on. There's things.
Did that make it detrimental? Did it
Yes,
give the water
yeah,
a faster path to get in?
Drainage, our lake association up in Maine, one of the things we talk about is barriers and buffers to keep the stuff, more phosphorus from getting in the lake, because that makes the plants grow.
Right. So, I think at this point, I'm gonna go back to Mr. Richie one more.
Yeah, the point I'm making too is if it's gonna be a motor restriction on residents, then it should be a motor restriction on the lake also. I mean, for a total lake, so these big boats that have 100 horse or something that are on the lake now can't operate.
Right, I mean, that once again, I think,
I don't know if we can say that.
right, I think the end result's gonna be, we're gonna send our recommendation or a letter to conservation that we're extremely concerned about public safety access. And they're gonna have to come up with a better solution than 6 rocks that, somebody put in with a front end loader. That's my opinion. Mrs. Mason, one more, I'll give you one more chance. One more bite at the apple. You have something you want to add, or you just up?
Yes, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I have a hard time hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep, thank you, Richie.
There are 2 things that I do want to point out. The gentleman that have just been speaking keeps saying we're restricting Dudley residents. We're not restricting, we don't want to restrict them from fishing. And if it sounds like they just need to bring their boats in to fish and they don't want to make any concessions. But we have we as an association and residents on that pond have a big vested interest in keeping it clean. We're spending thousands of dollars per household to do this. So to address the question of people taking their boats in and out, it'd be like throwing their money out the window. So I can't speak for everybody, but I do believe that people would use some common sense here. So, and again, reiterating, we don't want to restrict people, just the boats on carpeted trailers, that's all.
Mr. Massey?
I know you have a vested interest, but again, I'm lakefront owner, I get this. I understand this issue very, very well, but we don't own the lake, right? It was there for have people use it, right? So we should focus our energies on figuring out how best to let everybody use it. I know you said we're not restricting, you're restricting some people's trailers, right? See, again, we're up here, right? We're trying to like make this like, for everybody, not one.
But if we don't take action now, we won't have a pond for them to fish in years down the road.
I understand, and what my point is, that's the argument is we should try to solve that issue, right? Because again, be careful, because this could affect everybody, whoever makes the final decision, whether it's conservation. It could be a state issue. I don't know if the state, because it is a great pond, would have a say. Greg, I don't know if you have any other experience with this.
State only has a say if they own the access. So if the state owns a boat ramp, then they will enact regulations that they feel are appropriate, but if it's owned by a town or privately owned, they're hands off.
But I mean, the stuff that Mr. Marquis brought up, is you can find it online easily. That's more of a recommendation to put out as a guideline to a governing body, like local. I think we talked about that a little bit,
Exactly.
you and I. All right, so I'm gonna go back. First off, I don't know if it needs to be a motion. I think we need to inform conservation that, as a board, we're concerned about public safety access. I'm gonna wrap that into your motion.
So my concern right now, my only concern is that, and I'll make a motion, that by the close of business Friday, there is no permanent obstruction that will prevent public safety from accessing that way. By the close of business Friday, even if it requires our highway department to get up there. It doesn't prevent any of the other solutions, gates, fences, chains, from being used. But we've got to be able to access the lake if we need to.
Second.
All right, motion is second. I have just one question, Greg. Do we have, does that fall under our scope of authority?
You appoint the Conservation Commission, some would say you do. You're the chief executive. In the absence of rules that guide you, you have a right to enact probably reasonable restrictions, and I think it's reasonable.
So, first step, I'll call it to a vote.
Well,
Oh, Mr.
just
Massey.
real quick discussion, just until we can figure out the particulars, I think we should make sure, again, public safety being number one, that remains open until conservation and whoever.
If you want to, right, if you want to put a chain across and give the keys out tomorrow, do
Right.
it tomorrow.
Do it.
But we've got to be able to get on the lake.
Right.
So, all right, that's the first motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. And Greg, I'm sure you and Michelle can make it work through email to conservation, tell them that's the first step that we took.
Yeah, sure.
And are we talking both access points there, or one? Because there's a
Both
paved.
have boulders, yeah, take them all away.
Should we unblock both of them, or just one of them? The paved one?
I think until they
I
can
don't know
figure
I don't know the area well enough. I know you're looking at me, but I just don't know the neighborhood.
on block one? Which one, Danny?
One's in better shape.
Is that okay with you? Wasn't the
Works for me.
motion? So I'm not going to ask for a re-motion, but the intent is to unblock the paved one.
Fair.
And then a second motion to kick the issue back to conservation.
I think we refer it back, Mr. Chairman, to conservation, and we'd like them to look at the issue of public access, bearing in mind the amount of money, the weed control that's been spent, but we'd like to look at their recommendation for public access, whether it's motorized, non-motorized, that sort of thing.
All right, so, for a second?
So read it back again, Jay?
Kind of clean it up a little bit.
Yeah, I gotta clean it up a little bit.
The second one?
So we're gonna refer the remaining questions
Yeah.
to the Conservation Committee.
To come up with, sorry,
To come up with a recommendation.
and final determination.
Final determination on public access and for a and for restricted access to the lake that does not restrict access for public safety.
All right, so we're going to ask, for a second?
Does not restrict
Second.
in any way public safety
Second.
access.
Right, and as Mr. Ruda said too, we're taking, sorry, Michelle?
Just wanted to make sure I got the motion.
We definitely are sympathetic and want to take into consideration the funds expended.
Yeah.
But I think that's the course that should go forward. We have our idea what we want fire chief on our side of the pond has already made his recommendation, and if that's, conservation could, as Mr. Marcy said, could take the gentleman's suggestion and say, you know what, no motorized for anybody,
Limit to Dudley Charlton resident, any number of things could happen,
Right.
yeah.
which is outside our
Right,
control.
right, and I didn't, I was trying to, just when I say we don't own the lake, we don't. I have people in front of my place all the time, and I was trying to look, because people are watching and they listen, they want to make sure they see all sides of this, right? That's why I'm.
We don't own it, but we are stewards of it.
Correct, which means, which is why we have volunteers at a much, much bigger lake that actually will go down on a Saturday, especially during tournaments, and inspect boats. When they were here, when we had these pre-meetings last year, I said that there's like training that people can do so people can do it. Problem is, nobody ever wants to do it, right? There's only like a few hardcore people who really want to get involved and make sure, because everybody, hey, you live in a lake, you want to enjoy it, right? So it is incumbent on us as lakefront owners to keep it clean. I get that, right? And the amount of money we spend, keeping our shoreline so the stuff doesn't get in, and on the weed treat, my lake's too big to do the weed treatment, obviously, but we get that. I just wanted everybody to see that there's more than just, it's not all about the weeds. It's about access and how we grant access. That's all I wanted everybody to know.
Right, and, and then, it's not in the motion, but again, just for the record, it's seemingly broad-based, but it's also clearly stated that it should fall under conservation. I think we're trying to do our due diligence, because we're the board that most people watch, most
Right.
people follow.
Right.
I mean, you guys, like we said, we're not gonna go back too far, but you guys went to conservation, we didn't even know, and we live in town.
No, but we're also like trying to like look at this
Right.
from everybody's point of view.
But I'm saying,
right?
most people watch our meeting,
Yeah. Oh.
and
yeah.
nobody realized, like that last time, nobody even realized conservation already ruled on it.
April 25th was the
Yeah.
letter from Matt, and we just found out last couple weeks ago.
So we have a motion and a second to, I'm gonna paraphrase, but to refer it back to conservation with the understanding that public safety access is paramount, number one.
Yep.
And any other access or restriction conservation deems, that's them. They're accepting, as Mr. Ruda said, also the fact that we sympathetic to the amount of money you folks have expended trying to keep that pond the way it is. Call to a vote. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. And again, you folks stay in touch with the administrator, you gentlemen, same thing. The answers are gonna be through conservation, but they're a part-time board. Greg or Michelle, you guys send an email or a phone call, keep you abreast of like when the meeting is or anything that may have happened. But we're trying to get to a point where, as Mr. Massey said, as Mrs. Mason said, they're stewards. And I'm sure you folks that fish it, that don't live there, are good stewards of your craft and.
Well, outdoorsmen are conservationists by nature.
Yeah,
right?
they are. Most you would think. So, good luck.
Thanks,
Oh,
everybody.
Mr. Guyon. By Friday. Yeah. Because like Jonathan said, if somehow they can come up with a solution, gate chain, painted PVC. Okay, we good with that, Greg?
I am, as long as we have access and we have
Yeah.
keys.
Excuse me? I don't know who you are, so you need to come up and identify yourself.
My name is Gary Babin. Who is they when you say about putting a chain up?
Conservation would be the one that would decree it. If conservation says, just for simplicity's sake, 2 posts with a chain across it with painted PVC so nobody drives into it at night. And I'm not sure who's gonna pay for it, or who's gonna get the equipment in there to put it in, but, I mean, would be all part of conservation, part of their conditions. Moving on, I believe. Lost my agenda. Oh, I got it. Partridge Hill Road discussion. Mr. Administrator.
Well, we have some good news. So, Mr. Guyon and I and the town planner did meet, and we developed a list of items that we wanted to see specifically enumerated in an agreement between the town and the solar developer. And we proposed 8 items, and each of those items has been accepted. So you have a copy of a letter that's in your packet, Forefront Power. And let me just kind of enumerate what those are. Number one, that the developer would locate any subsurface drainage system that may exist within the private roadway systems. There may have been drainage pipes or drainage structures installed, and if they're there, we want to know that they're there. So they agree that they would do that. Secondly, that the developer would be responsible for putting together road acceptance plans. So there would be road acceptance plans that would be drafted prior to any vote of the town. Number 3, berm would be installed for the full length of the roadway prior to the installation of any hot top or asphalt, and that would be properly blended to ensure that it's being adhered. That they would clean out any existing catch basins along the entire length of the roadway, and that would be done at the end of the project. Next, that they would agree to loam and seed the edges of the roadway that are disturbed by construction to join the abutting private property. Additionally, the island at the end of the cul-de-sac would be reduced in size and paved to allow easier access for the purposes of snow removal. And then lastly, that there would be an as-built plan that will be drafted and recorded in the Registry of Deeds at no cost to the town. Additionally, the town did request, and the developer agreed to, that they would make a payment to the town in the amount of $2,000 to cover its legal costs with negotiation of the proposed agreement. And the one item that has not changed is that they would agree prior to the issuance of construction, they would file a road bond in the amount of $75,000. So those are things we asked for, and the clumsy language that's there was my language, so they pretty much copied and pasted what I asked them to do. And I feel much more comfortable with this matter going to town meeting with this document in place, signed and sealed, so that commits everyone that they'll adhere and they'll follow up on what's been requested. Great.
One sec, Greg, so the First Amendment, as denoted, will be filed at the Registry of Deeds before work commences?
Yes.
Bond will be put up, bless you, before work commences? The performance bond?
That will be a request that we make. I didn't see that clearly stated in here in terms of the timing of the bond, but we certainly do not want to give anyone an opportunity to escape their obligations due to some interpretation of legalese.
Well, it says in the agreement from Forefront, it's not on the amendment, but it does say, in lieu of completing roadwork prior to issuance of construction, a bond will be posted. It's just, it's not listed on the amendment. But
right.
Once they agree to the terms of the contract as you presented, it will be then.
Right.
Good. Mr. Ruda, sorry.
No, I just wanted to say, Mr. Chairman, that, to Greg and to the highway superintendent, Mr. Guyon, this is first-class work. This is finally what we've been holding out for.
Exactly right, Joe.
So I just wanted to give you kudos for that, both of you, for getting this together.
All right, I agree, Mr. Chair. I agree. This is something, once I saw that the planning board had sponsored that article, really raised the hair on the back of my neck, because as we found out, we found plans from 2002 when I was on the planning board. It was supposed to be done. Not the planning board's opinion notwithstanding about how they tried to force through a road acceptance several times. That road was in no condition to be accepted. There was no guarantee it would be, nor is there a guarantee it's going to be accepted at town meeting, but at least it'll be constructed to a standard that the town can make it acceptable.
And we will feel comfortable in providing
Endorsing.
a recommendation that the work has been done per what I request.
Correct, exactly, perfect. Mr. Massey?
The thing about this, great work on for everybody involved, and this is something that actually came together pretty quickly, if you think about it, over the last, what does this take, a month and a half? When was town meeting?
Yeah, it took like 6 weeks.
End of May? May 26th, so in, less than 2 months, we're gonna have a special town meeting with everybody agreeing and, to get what they want, which is, I'm really proud that the team came together for this one.
He really likes that team concept,
I like-
in case you didn't notice.
I like
team
team too.
It's nothing, we're nothing without our team.
But I feel as though going into town meeting with this signed document, we're in pretty good shape in terms of protecting the interests of the residents, and we're doing what the residents have asked us to do.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, one thing that I'm concerned about is having a quorum for that. It's the end of the summer. We need to make sure that,
Well, it would behoove,
the residents
it would
and,
behoove the Partridge Hill residents and the applicant, who, I don't know if they still have family members in town, to ensure that they, and once again, you can have a quorum, doesn't guarantee it passes.
that's correct. I mean, I think
I think it will, but
we'll recommend it.
We'd be happy to put it on our sign out front, too.
I think we should,
Yeah,
special
cable
town
access.
meeting. I think we should do that.
put on the web, on the homepage if we can.
In May, we
Yeah, I'm
only
gonna be
had
tied up.
51.
Yeah, not you.
May, we
I'm
only
gonna
had
be tied
51 people, so.
Gotta be tied up, he says.
At the Springtown meeting, so.
Now,
We need how many?
50.
50, so.
is it only 50?
That's Oregon.
Oh. Yeah, we are, we're having it right here, and it's gonna be right here in this room.
It is. We'll
So-
open up the petition, and hopefully,
Oh.
at least 50 will be here.
I don't think there's any vote necessary, right, Greg? It's just an
No,
update?
I would ask that the board authorize me to sign this document.
Make a motion, ask for a motion. And give
Mr.
the-
Chairman, I move that we authorize the town administrator to enter into this agreement with Forefront Power.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye?
All right.
Aye, unanimous. Ask the board unanimous consent to give Clarendon Wood Fund amount of $324 to pay for Harrington Memorial.
So
June.
moved.
Ask for unanimous consent to have the town clerk set the fee for through the Board of Selectmen, the set fee of $20 per dog for an FY19 dog license.
So moved.
Second. Go ahead, go for it. Bring it home.
No, I'm just asking unanimous consent.
That's the same as a vote? Okay.
At this point, additional year-end transfers, FY 2018. Greg?
So, this is a administrative action necessary to balance our books at the end of the year. So we had some additional unbudgeted costs in public safety, police and fire. And so what we would do is recommend that the board transfer surpluses totaling $49,797, to which the sum of $18,857.32 would go to the fire department for the cost that you see in front of you. $30,681.44 would go to the police department. And lastly, the sum of $258.24 would go to the Board of Assessors. But this is what happens when you have public safety and you want to maintain a certain level of staffing and protection to the public, is sometimes you end up overspending. I thank both chiefs for giving me a heads up and letting me know that this was coming, which gave us an opportunity to identify where we have surpluses available. And I would recommend you so approve.
A motion to approve the year-end transfers for FY 2018, Mr.
That's
Chairman.
all overtime, right?
It's various costs, there are
Is it
overtime
Not
and there's
just
night
overtime,
coverage.
there's other stuff, chief? It's only one line of the thing, so I was just curious.
Yeah, basically what happened from my end was, when the budget was approved at the May 17 town meeting,
Yeah.
to balance the budget, we were reduced by $25,000 overall. So we didn't make any adjustment on that going forward through the year. And I had an officer out for 10 months who was still out, and I had another officer leave in February. So the rest of it would be for additional overtime costs.
So we have a,
Thanks, chief.
we have a motion and a second, I believe, to
Second.
approve the year-end transfers totaling $49,797.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Marcy.
Did the FAA approve this as well?
It's already been signed, yes.
They did, okay. I just saw that they both have to. Well, we gotta, I mean, it's hard to predict this stuff, so we have to, but this came from accounts that we had money in, Greg, just to be
Yeah,
clear. Okay, all right.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Board member comments. Mr. Marcy.
I don't think I have anything, Steve.
Mr. Ruda.
I'm good.
The only thing I want to state, again, thank town administrator, superintendent, getting together on getting that Partridge Hill agreement done. I also want to offer my apologies to the groundbreaking ceremony. I had a miss for the fire station. Looks like we got the long-awaited ball going in the right direction there. Thank the chief for,
Thank you, Michelle.
fire and EMS chief for all his hard work, getting that project underway.
Have an update?
Also had some dialogue with Greg today. At some point, I think the board members, either alone or maybe if you can hitch a ride with the highway superintendent, I think you need to take a ride up to Pierpont Estates. There was an email that went out stating that the developer is considering winding down the project. I think there's some issues up there. Danny, the highway superintendent, and I went up last year. Danny, I know, wrote a report stating the problems. Doesn't look like anything's been done to fix the problems, except when something arises. There's a temporary solution. We got emails and pictures from residents. And I think we, as highway commissioners, we need to stay on top of that. I know that's going through subdivision approval, which is planning board, but it's ultimately going to rely on us and the highway superintendent, and there's a chance it may overlap different regimes in that department, so we
Yeah, I'll
need,
definitely head up there. I've been up there a few times, and
Yeah.
there's a lot that look. You could tell that some work needs to be done to make it look like a real, not a construction site.
right, I mean, and, you know, at one time, the highway superintendent wanted to put a restriction on how long a base coat can be down, and we're finding out why. It's looks like it's insufficient in some areas, and the roadway is really suffering from,
Is there a lot of ledge up there, Danny, or something?
right, but the road itself is just, you really need to go up there in the daylight and look at it. And I'm asking the board for permission to allow the town administrator. We talked about, when I was on the planning board years ago, they instituted a form called the bond reduction form. I think we would like to ask the planning board to consider removing that bond reduction form. A couple months ago, that subdivision owner was on a planning board meeting. I believe it wasn't even an agenda item. Went to the planning board, and he got a bond reduction based on town engineer report, which is generally okay, but I think the town should take a long look at not giving monies back until a project is done. You know, engineer report notwithstanding, we're gonna be the ones that get caught holding the bag, so I'd like to have Greg talk to the planner about getting it on their agenda and/or finding out the mechanism for removing that form from future consideration on subdivisions. And
You gotta
other-
hold these developers' feet to the fire.
I mean, I'm all, if something's,
Follow through.
right, but if something's progressing in an orderly manner,
Yep.
and it's one thing, but a subdivision, for no fault of anybody's, is lingering for years and years, you know, you can't be giving monies back that may be necessary down the road to complete a project.
We have enough of those messes we've had to clean up in my time on the board.
Yep. Anything else from the board? Department heads. Mr. Guyon. Fire and EMS?
Yeah, do it.
So we had a groundbreaking ceremony. When was it? Last Wednesday? Yeah, last Wednesday. As you can see, they started doing work pretty ramped up in a pretty short amount of time. They trucked a lot of dirt off today. Wednesday, the actual demolition of the two end bays is taking place. So if anybody's around and wants to look at the claw rip the corner of the end of the building off, feel free to come down. The other thing I wanted to mention, aside from that, I didn't get a chance to come up before, was my shortfall was the big repair we had to engine 3, which was over $4,000, and our fire call volume was up 33%, so over last year. So that I accrued some overtime costs with that, but I did keep in contact with Greg since April, so we knew it was coming.
Chief, were they cutting holes in the roof? They were doing practice the other day?
Yeah, they let us. We did some ventilation training just because that part of the buildings, it's already actually all been sealed off from the inside.
Right.
That's awesome.
And I didn't know if you noticed, we have a Connex box out here that's ours. We're just storing some things in there because obviously the space has been shrunk down during construction.
Perfect. Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Police? Good. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Chairman, move that we adjourn for this
Second.
evening.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Everybody.